For nearly half a century, Lord Louis Mountbatten was celebrated as one of Britain's greatest public figures, a war hero, a royal insider, the last Viceroy of India, and the man who stood at the center of political decisions that shaped the modern world. But the moment the FBI released its long-sealed files on him, everything changed. Because inside those pages, hidden for decades, were whispered allegations, informant reports, and secret assessments that suggested the polished, heroic image Britain presented to the world may have concealed a private life far more complex and far more explosive than anyone ever knew. This is the story the monarchy never wanted the public to hear, and the story the FBI tracked for nearly 40 years. Mountbatten and Edwina dazzled British society. They were glamorous, powerful, untouchable. But behind the glittering photographs and formal titles, their marriage, their relationships, and their influence over British politics formed a web so tangled that even foreign intelligence agencies kept them under watch. To understand why the FBI cared so much, to understand why they collected pages of allegations and notes, you must first understand the extraordinary world Mountbatten was born into. Because his story begins not with scandal, but with empire. Louis Mountbatten wasn't just connected to royalty, he was royalty. His great-grandmother was Queen Victoria. His cousin was King George V. His godfather was Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. He grew up surrounded by palaces, royal estates, and the imperial families of Europe. He spent parts of his childhood visiting the Russian Romanovs and became especially close to Grand Duchess Maria. So close, in fact, that he kept her photograph near his bedside for the rest of his life. This wasn't a normal upbringing. It was a childhood inside the inner sanctum of the most powerful dynasties on earth. But as he grew older, this privilege came with a heavy cost. When World War I erupted, anti-German sentiment swept across Britain. The Battenbergs, Mountbatten's original family name, were suddenly viewed with suspicion. And in a desperate attempt to protect the monarchy's image, the family abandoned their German identity and remade themselves overnight. The Battenbergs became the Mountbattens, a new name, a new image, a new version of history, the first of many. Mountbatten launched himself into the Royal Navy with relentless ambition. He climbed the ranks through a mixture of charm, connections, and genuine skill. Soon, he wasn't just another officer. He was a man positioned to shape world events. He commanded ships in World War II. He became Supreme Allied Commander of Southeast Asia. And eventually, he would be handed one of the most volatile, history-defining assignments of the century: the final British Viceroy of India. But while his public career soared, something else was happening behind the scenes, something intelligence agencies found impossible to ignore. Because whether Mountbatten intended it or not, rumors followed him everywhere. Louis and Edwina Mountbatten were known as the it couple of the British aristocracy, glittering, fashionable, endlessly photographed. But in private, their marriage was far from conventional. Edwina was notorious across Europe for her long list of lovers. Diplomats, aristocrats, military officers, even celebrities. She didn't hide her affairs. She embraced them. And Mountbatten? He publicly tolerated everything. In fact, the couple openly described their marriage as companionship with freedom. To the British tabloids, all of this stayed hidden. Royal pressure made sure of that. But American intelligence agencies didn't ignore it. The FBI began collecting informants reports, They took notes on the couple's unusual personal lives. They evaluated whether any of it could be used to manipulate Mountbatten, a man who held enormous political influence. Nothing in the files was proven. Many allegations were based on informants' claims, social rumors, or statements from diplomats. But the pattern was concerning enough that the Bureau kept tracking him for decades. Why? Because Mountbatten wasn't an ordinary aristocrat. He had access to military secrets, world leaders, and strategic information across continents. Anything that made him vulnerable was a potential threat, and the FBI wanted to know everything. When Britain decided to withdraw from India, the empire was collapsing under pressure. Communal tensions were rising, riots were spreading, and the political situation seemed impossible. Into this storm, Mountbatten was sent. He had just one job: oversee the British exit. He arrived with a dramatic flair, a sense of urgency, and a deep belief in his own ability to control chaos. But by accelerating the timeline of withdrawal, he unintentionally contributed to one of the largest population displacements in human history: the partition of India and Pakistan. Historians still debate his decisions. Some view him as a man overwhelmed by forces beyond his control. Others see him as someone whose haste unleashed a tragedy. But while India burned, the rumors surrounding his private life quietly traveled with him. American intelligence watched. British security officials whispered. Political insiders took note. Mountbatten was now operating at the very center of global power, and the questions surrounding him were becoming too big to ignore. After India, Mountbatten returned to Britain more powerful than ever. He became a mentor to Prince Philip, a confidant of Queen Elizabeth II, a guiding force behind the early life of Prince Charles. To the royals, he wasn't just family. He was the advisor they trusted above all others. But the FBI files continued to grow, slowly, quietly, discreetly. Informants reported stories about his social circles, his relationships, and his private interests. Nothing was confirmed, much of it was unverified, but the sheer volume of material made one thing undeniable. The U.S. government believed Mountbatten's private life was relevant to national security. And in the Cold War era, that meant everything. On a quiet summer morning in 1979, Mountbatten climbed aboard a small fishing boat in Ireland. He was preparing for a peaceful family outing. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. But unknown to him, the Irish Republican Army had planted a bomb beneath the deck. As the boat drifted away from the shore, a blast tore through the calm waters. Mountbatten was killed instantly. The attack stunned the world. The royal family was shattered, and Britain responded with anger, grief, and shock. But even in death, controversy followed him. The FBI files, finally declassified decades later, reignited global interest in the secrets Mountbatten carried to his grave. And the question no one could ever fully answer: who was the real Mountbatten, the heroic statesman, or the man the FBI watched for 40 years? Mountbatten's legacy is a labyrinth of contradictions. He was a war hero, but also a man surrounded by rumors. A powerful statesman, but one whose private life raised intelligence concerns. A royal mentor, but someone whose influence came with shadows the public never saw. The truth is simple. Mountbatten was neither saint nor villain. He was a complicated, ambitious, deeply influential figure whose life touched every corner of the 20th century. But the FBI files proved one thing beyond any doubt. Behind the medals, behind the titles, behind the royal image, there was another Mountbatten. A Mountbatten the world was never supposed to see. And even now, decades later, we are still uncovering the secrets he left behind.